Ow! Greetings, YouTube. This is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Alright, this is another Facebook response. This time, it is to a friend of mine, to my closest friend. The one that I told y'all all about. She and I were really close back in college, and we still stay in communication, even though she moved pretty far from where I now live. Uh, but we were in a big discussion after I had posted a thread about religion teaching children not to think. Now, she doesn't have a problem with religion per se, but she does have a problem with Christianity in that she feels that it's arrogant for us to believe that we're the only one true religion and all this other stuff. And I've been talking with her for a while, so I'm not going to bore you with all the details. So I just wanted to respond to this last comment because I've been responding to her typing out my answers, but this is going to require a lot more finesse and a lot more explanation. It's just better conveyed uh, in a more personable manner. In a more personal manner. So this is my response to you, Liz. So I'm going to go ahead and read each part aloud, and if I have something to say about it, I'll go ahead and respond to it. So the first part, she says, what I did, by the way, is for those of you who don't know, is I was trying to show her that now remember the whole deal started with here when I was talking about apologetics, and like a lot of non-believers, she's not a Christian. Uh, People dismiss apologetics as just being trained to, be all sly and use double talk and all this kind of stuff, and it's nothing like that. A lot of people have the wrong idea of what apologetics is. They don't really know what it is. And this is another case of someone who really does not, and I'm very sorry, with all due respect to you, Sha, you don't know what apologetics is. Okay, so what I did is I talked to her about, well, one of my favorite Christian philosophers and apologists is Dr. William Lane Craig. And of course, for those of you who have been watching my video, you know that I do have a lot of respect for the man. And if you've been to his sites or listened to his commentary or watched him debate, you know that a lot of his people, especially atheists, hate his guts. But if you ever look at the comments that are made against him, most every time they whittle down to ad hominem attacks. Very Sometimes you'll see people actually try to engage his arguments, but you find out very quickly these are people who don't understand his arguments. And this I'll go over in just a second. So let me go ahead and get started. She says, just tried reading stuff from your favorite apologist. Same old BS claptrap. Kalam cosmological argument can only posit a creation and possibility of a creator, not the nature of the attributes of said creator. Okay, let me pause right here. First of all, um, you're just looking at one of the things he's talked about. Now, he talks about this constantly. First of all, he does not posit the kalam as saying that it doesn't that it posits the attributes of the creator. What he does, that's something he adds on after the kalam. It is an addendum to the kalam argument. He's not trying to say the kalam argument proves that there is a God. The kalam argument merely says that it says the same thing you said, that there is a possibility for the existence of God. So you're getting the absolute wrong thing from what he's saying. After he talks about, of course, he says everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe had a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. What he does is steps back and explains what would that cause have to be. That's not the Kalam argument. That's something he adds on after the fact to try to see what it would have to be. And so, with our understanding of current cosmology, he explains that the cause for such a universe would have to be transcendent of time, space, immaterial, intelligent, and actually extremely intelligent and immeasurably powerful. So, and eternal. Well, transcendent of time and space. It's eternal. It would have to be eternal and non-corporeal, at least non-material. Excuse me. So these are the things that such a cause for the universe would have to have. What else do we know that would fit that description but God? That's all that he's saying. You're looking too deeply into this. This is not double talk. This is not trying to be trying to say some trying to put in something that's not true. It's just logical assessment. All right. No evidence in the universe points to any one deity creating the universe. Um, that all depends on how you interpret the evidence. First of all, even scripture, and I'll go to scripture for this because it does say that the heavens declare the glory of God and his handiwork. Um, however, and actually, this is one of the things I was trying to tell you in the beginning, that Christianity had played a major role in the development of modern science, because we understand that all of creation is a reflection of God, and it's proven to be true. Here's the reason why. According to the Christian worldview, creation, all of the universe is a reflection of a rational mind of a rational creator. Therefore, it must be governed by rational rules. And what have we found using science? Exactly that. And it was really Christianity that pushed that the farthest. Yes, there were contributors from other religions. I am not saying that other religions did not, people of other religions did not have a play in this, did not have a piece in this. But the major contributors to the modern science movement, and even to its actual beginning, were Christian, because of the Christian worldview of the universe, and we wanted to test it out. So, actually, the universe itself, by the Christian worldview, points to a deity creating the universe. The very existence of the universe points to it. And if you have an objection to that, please show me how the universe does not point to a deity. Thus far, all you're doing is just making an assertion, which you do a lot. But then again, a lot of people who are non-believers don't. Well, I know that a lot of people aren't used to arguing their points in a forum, and I'm not trying to say that you don't, that you're not used to that kind of thing. But what it comes to is that you make a lot of assertions in your arguments. Rather than give me evidence that it's this way, you just say it's this way. Well, I'm trying to explain that it's this way, and this is how we know. Now, it gives strength to the prime mover of Newton, or the clockwork deity of deism, primarily, not any personal God at all. I You might want to look up the argument from fine tuning, because the whole deal with that shows that not only is the prime mover intelligent, but is most likely personal. Now, it doesn't give a ironclad argument on that state, I will admit, because even with the um, parameters for the existence of intelligent life in the universe being balanced on such a razor's edge as the argument from fine tuning posits, it doesn't necessarily mean that that the creator would have to be personal, but it does present a very strong argument that it would have to be personal. So once again, I object to that. And if you have any other reason for it not being, I would love to hear it. Let me see here. Could be Yahweh slash Jehovah slash Allah that created the world. Okay, first of all, let me correct you on this. Yahweh, or Jehovah, well, Jehovah's a mispronunciation of the Tetragrammaton, but that's another story for another time. Allah is the God of the Muslims, is actually fundamentally different from the Judeo-Christian God in many ways. Now, I'd have to bring up some information on that, so it would take a little bit of time. But if you want to know why, I'll go ahead and try to find some information to explain it. So, but okay, in all fairness, I know you're just trying to say that it could be this, or this. So that's another story for another time. That was just a nitpick. Please excuse me, everybody. I'm reading this on the fly. Now, so could be Yahweh Jehovah Allah that created the world, could be Brahman, I think you were trying to say Ra or flying spaghetti monster, cannot prove it. Well, this, as Dr. Frank Turek said, for a lot of these atheists that came up, and I'm not calling you an atheist, I'm just saying there are atheists that came up and presented a variation on this question, saying, well, how do you know it's your God and not these others? And like I told you, which is what I got from Frank Turek, it must be taken on a case-by-case basis. We have to look at what the worldview of these gods are and which one seems like it would be most likely. And I think that you can do that. So these are the first argument that you're even looking at Dr. Craig, looking at from Dr. Craig, isn't going to tell you all this. I think what it looks like, Liz, is that you read it and then you just decided, well, I can't do this, can't do this. And I'm like, you were in such a hurry to try to make a rebuttal to the argument that you didn't really see anything else that Dr. Craig has written on the subject at all. He has a huge website with a massive amount of resources. He personally answers questions in regards to these things in his Q&A. He has a massive backlog of it. He even has a search bar in his website, reasonablefaith.org, if you haven't been there, that has that you can put in, subject matter and see if he has anything more to say on it. What it seems to me right here, just at this point, is that you're just assuming that this is just some smokescreen that he's putting up when you haven't really delved into anything. I think that you're approaching this with a preconceived notion that he is just trying to defend the Christian faith because the Bible says so. Look deeper than that. Go back to his site, read up on some of the stuff that he's written on this subject. Look at the answers that he gives to questions that people ask him. Moving on. The assertion that people are miserable and live empty lives without God is also baseless. Last time I checked, Dr. Craig never said that. As a matter of fact, he's been on record as saying you can live a completely moral life without believing in objective morality. The problem comes from where you get it from. He never denies that you can live a moral life or a happy life without being a Christian or without believing in any kind of objective morality. So I don't know where you're getting this from. The majority of the world is not Christian, yet live meaningful, fulfilled lives full of productivity as do agnostics and atheists. Okay. He cherry picks his scholars to prove his point. No, he doesn't. He's mentioned a whole bunch of scholars from all walks of life. The very assertion that you think he cherry picks shows me you really haven't read up much about him at all. Or you're just listening to what other non-believers say about him. And if you're doing that, Liz, please listen to me. Don't listen to these other non-believers and what they have to say about him, because most of them hate his guts. I'm not saying all of them do. Some actually posit very rational things to put up against his arguments. But a lot of the people who you meet on the internet who have a problem with him don't have a problem with his arguments. They do, but they're at a loss to defend themselves. And so they attack the man. They accuse him of all these things that are utterly false. He's talked about this time and time again and on his podcast. And you can see it when you actually read a lot of his stuff, which I have. There are a few scholars out there who are as considerate, as winsome, as thoughtful, and as well read and very concise with his arguments as Dr. Craig. Now, this may just make me go down looking like I'm a Dr. Craig fanboy, and hey, if that's the case, I own that. There are some things that he's posited that I'm not 100% in agreement with. But I've found the man to be very, very useful when it comes to helping people to understand why we believe what we believe. So, and he has never ever said that people are miserable or live empty lives without God. He was saying that ultimately there is no meaning to life without him. That in the end, without God, there's no basis for comparison to anything. And that you're just living your life in a way that you feel it boils things down to how to basically your taste. You like or don't like this thing, rather than what is right or what is wrong. So in the end, life without God is, though you may attach some meaning to it, objectively speaking, it is meaningless. As a matter of fact, I did a video about that a while back. If you want to take a look at it, I'll have a link down in the doobly-doo. I'll try to find it. So, and yeah, the assertion that he cherry picks his scholars, that is not even true at all. I don't even know where you got that from. Nowhere even 50% of secular scholars believe the Gospels were written by eyewitnesses. Actually, I'm still learning about that. Now that is a completely different scholar I can point you to on that. A guy named J.P. Holding, who's actually done an extensive study on that. He actually wrote a book called Trusting the New Testament, which I'm still reading. And from what I've seen, we actually have very good evidence to show that the people who wrote the New Testament accounts were eyewitnesses. Those who don't believe they're eyewitness accounts are actually fairly few in number. And by the way, here's an interesting thing, and I'm trying to remember where I found this. Oh yeah, Dr. Craig actually talked about this recently. As a matter of fact, I pulled up something and I believe I'd sent it to a friend of mine. And it was basically Dr. Craig saying, even if we don't know who wrote it, it doesn't mean it's not true. In his book On Guard, which I asked you to read, he goes into the criteria of its historical criteria. It's not criteria that he's just pulling out of his backside because it just happens to fit with his Christian worldview. This is criteria that historians use to verify documentation to know if it's true or false. People don't have a problem with accounts of a thing that happened of much longer time ago than the events of the Gospels. But all of a sudden, when we look at the Gospels, everyone's suddenly ready to try to make every kind of objection possible to its veracity. They weren't written by eyewitnesses. This couldn't have possibly be true just because it makes an extraordinary claim. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. All kinds of flawed rationalizations. You, I think if you want to read something very interesting about that, I think you need to read Trusting the New Testament by James Patrick Holding. It's available on Amazon. I don't know if he has a Kindle version of it, but I was given the paperback version of it by a friend of mine who had actually read it. So let me see. Decades after the event, the deaths of purported authors. Okay, first of all, yeah, they were written maybe about a decade, maybe two after the events. But that's actually expected. Because, first of all, these were common folks. Many of them could not read or write. Secondly, the gospel in that day and age, things were mostly spread by word of mouth anyway before they were written down. And actually, 20 years is an extremely short time between an event and the writing thereof for it to for a mostly word of mouth society, a non literary society. Uh, what was that? What else was that? The way that these actually we do have some. We actually know who wrote a few of the Gospels. One being the book of I think it's Mark, because the early church fathers who were contemporary around that time on multiple occasions have said that this I think it was Mark was a companion of Peter. So he got this was all like first hand account stuff written by a secondary candidate. So it's done by primary source material. But I'm sorry, I'm branching off on different subjects. What I'm trying to say here is that we have evidence that shows that most likely the Gospels were written by eyewitness accounts, or at least people who got them from primary sources. Okay, so and secondly, if you want me to direct you to the Q&A where Dr. Craig explains that we don't even have to know who wrote them for them to be true, I can show you that. So let me see. Decades after the event and deaths, and no, they were not written decades after the deaths of the reported author. The only book that was written that long after, I think this was the book of John, if memory serves. I'm not 100% sure. Let me see. It might not have been that one, but one was written like a lot further on in time afterwards. I have to go back and look at my information. So for him to say majority of scholars is also baseless. Okay, let me see here. Maybe I missed something. Nowhere even 50% of secular scholars believe the Gospels were written by eyewitness or even by the reported. Um, Actually, if you don't believe that the majority of scholars agree about the authenticity of Scripture, then why don't you talk to Dr. Craig yourself? He answers emails. He answers questions. Secondly, I recommend you check out that book, Trusting the New Testament, because James Patrick Holding is this is one of the things that he studied a lot. So you might want to go back and look at it. So really, instead of me finding a better apologist, with all due respect, Liz, I think you need to read more about this man. Oh, and a little addendum. I also found it vastly amusing that Christians use Muslim apologist theories to prove their own. What did I tell you in the beginning? Apologetics approaches the Christian worldview objectively. So it's perfectly comfortable with using things that have been developed by people who are not Christian. There is nothing wrong with that. I think instead of you saying that it's amusing, maybe you might want to consider this is what I've been trying to tell you. It's that example of what I've been trying to tell you being true. That apologetics is not trying to shoehorn a worldview without, let me see, in a cultural vacuum. Rather, it approaches our faith with a I know nothing attitude first. You know how biblical scholars have found out about the veracity of the gospels? They approach them in a manner that says these are historical documents. Are they true or are they not? They're not going to say, "Well, we believe these are historical documents. We need to find out how they. We need to find out how they're true." That's not how it goes. It's never how it goes. You have the wrong idea about Christianity. Please read a little more about Dr. Craig, and I really recommend you check out his book On Guard, and I recommend you check out James Patrick Holding's book, Trusting the New Testament. I think you might find some eye-opening things. Well, that's it for me, everybody, and you know, Liz, you know I always love you. Yeah, I will always consider you my friend. I'm not trying to be harsh with you, but I really want you to understand that you have the wrong idea about this stuff. A very, very mistaken idea. And I really wish you could understand just how wrong it is. I mean, think about back when you had this big thing about Paul this, Paul that, Paul that, and I'm sorry, I kind of I kind of just got sick of it, and just that's the reason why when I was describing things to you, I said, how many times do I have to tell you it's not centered around Paul? So I'm just like, why are you constantly doing Paul? But this is an example of how you have the wrong idea about Christianity. And my friend is here. So everybody, thank you very much for watching. And if you have any comments or questions, just keep them down below. As always, keep it civil. And thank you very much for watching, everyone. And as always, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. And as always, stay lucky and stay blessed. Take care.